this English lesson on struggles. So you might be wondering exactly what this lesson is about. I gave it the title or the topic, struggles, because each of us has things that we struggle with on a daily basis. Because we are humans, there are challenges in our lives, there are problems in our lives that we struggle with. So let me just check the audio here. Struggles. Sounds like everything's working great. So struggles can be serious. Struggles can be somewhat less serious. Struggles can be something that you yourself struggle with, or it can be something that someone does to you. So we're going to look at a number of different struggles. Some of them I think will make you laugh because you probably have that struggle yourself, but some of them are a lot more serious. Some of them might make you sad to think about. But the world is full of people, and one of the things that makes us human is that we have struggles in life. We have things that make our days challenging sometimes. So anyways, let's do this English lesson on struggles. By the way, I'm Bob the Canadian. If you're new here, welcome to this lesson. If you're one of the many people who are always here, I just want to say a big hi to all of you. Lots of you in the chat. It was nice to say hi to you before the live stream started this morning. But let's get started and start to talk about struggles. So the first, one last thing. So there's two ways to describe struggles, and you'll need to listen to which one I use. Sometimes you struggle with something, and sometimes you suffer from something. Okay, and I can't give you an exact reason or why we use that little difference in phrase when we mention things, but some things you will use struggle with. You will say, oh, I struggle with this. And other things you will say, I suffer from. So I suffer from this. So we'll go through these and you can kind of listen for those two phrases as we go along. But let's talk about, let's do a little English lesson on the struggles of life. So the first one is a very lighthearted one and one that I find kind of funny. Some people struggle with getting up on time. So some people set their alarm clock. This is a pretty old alarm clock, by the way, but they struggle with getting up on time. Sometimes people go to bed way too late every night, and then the next morning they struggle with getting out of bed. They struggle with getting up on time. Maybe they hit the snooze button too many times. On an alarm clock, when you hit the snooze button, it turns the alarm off. But then 7 or 10 minutes later, it goes off again. So some people struggle with getting up on time. I sometimes struggle with getting up on time. It's not very common. I'm usually someone who gets up fairly quickly. But in the winter, I struggle with getting up on time because the house is cold. And sometimes it's nice just to stay in bed with all the blankets on where it's nice and warm. So that is our first one. Some people struggle with getting up on time. For those of you just joining us, we are doing a little English lesson on the topic of struggles, things that people struggle with every day. Related to the struggle of getting up on time, some people struggle with being on time. Some people are always late. So you are either a person who struggles with this, or you probably know someone who struggles with this. I don't mean to sound too proud. I am a very timely person. I'm rarely late for things. I like to be on time, but I do know, I won't mention any names, but I do know some people who struggle with being on time. And you could also say they struggle with being late. So that would be the same thing, where if they need to be at work at 8 o'clock, they usually come in at 8:05. If they need to be somewhere at a certain time, they're usually always late. I'm smiling because I know someone really well who struggles with being on time. But again, I won't mention any names. I'm sure some of you struggle with being on time. So that's our first two. Some people struggle with getting up on time, and then related to that, they might be the same kind of person who struggles with being on time. So just a heads up, this is an English lesson on struggles. If you have questions, Todd will be posting the link for you in the chat. You can ask the question via the form there. Again, I will only be answering questions related to the topic of struggles, so I might skip your question. But anyways, welcome to the 300 people who are watching. Let's do a couple more, and then I will answer some questions. Some people struggle with nervousness. So for them, they are always maybe a little bit afraid of going places where there are large crowds. Maybe they struggle with nervousness when they need to speak up front or in front of a crowd. Maybe they struggle with nervousness because they have a new job. So when you're nervous, you're just always worried about the thing that you have to do. So for me, I am nervous today because I have to make sure all of the students in my school get one slice of pizza later today. I had to take care of that. We are having a bit of a party this afternoon. So my job is to make sure that the pizza from the pizza place comes on time and is paid for and is handed out in an orderly fashion. So I'm a little nervous about that. I don't generally struggle with nervousness though. As on the whole, I'm usually a fairly confident person unless I'm doing something completely new. Then I do struggle with it a bit. Hey, some people struggle with money. Particularly, they struggle with managing their money. So they might not know how to save money. When they go shopping, they might always spend too much money. This would be the kind of person that might always be asking to borrow money from you. But in English, we would say that some people struggle with money. Let's see here. Renata says she's not going to ask any questions today. That's okay, Renata. Ask away. But thank you so much for being here to learn some new vocabulary. So people do struggle with money. Sometimes people get their paycheck and they very quickly spend their entire paycheck. So that is not a nice situation to be in. If the opposite of struggling with money would be to be really good with money. That's how we would describe the opposite. But some people just can't stop spending money. Hey, let me jump over to some questions. I see that they're piling up. So Deek, let's see here. Deek Shanch, I have trouble saying your name, Deek. Deek Shanch says, how do I deal with people who judge and talk bad about others? So as hard as this is, you just need to ignore them, but it can be a challenge if the people who talk that way are in your own family or they're good friends. So I really feel for you, Deek Shanch, because that is a struggle. Some people go through life and I'll talk about it a little bit later, where other people talk about them in a bad way, and it's not enjoyable. The simple solution is find new friends, but that's not that simple, is it? Let's see here. Let's see. Gaga has the next question. Gaga says, you have experienced many things in life. I guess, yes. I am a student and I'm really under pressure with everything. Not only my studies, I am worried about my future career. So this is the advice I always give. Just look at what you absolutely have to get done today and get that done. And think about a few things, if you have extra time today, that you could do that will make tomorrow better. But I think it's actually healthy to be worried a little bit about your future and to feel a bit of pressure, as long as it's not overwhelming. And as always, I recommend that you have a balance in life. So do some exercise, do some, Deek Shanch has been recommending I do some meditation. I haven't started that yet, but I will. But there are things that can help you a little bit. Henry from Taiwan. Hi, Teacher Bob. Hi, Henry. What's the difference between plight, dilemma, and predicament? So a plight takes place over a longer period of time. You know, my plight might be that I don't have enough time in my day. So that's a long-term problem. A dilemma is a single problem, and a predicament is a single problem. So my dilemma today is that, let me see, what is my dilemma today? My dilemma today was getting to work on time. A predicament, though, is usually something that happens to you, okay? So if I drove my car off the road, that would not be a good predicament. So hopefully that made sense. Let me do a couple more here and then we'll continue with the lesson. Solange from France says, Solange, that's a nice name. Hello, Bob. I have sent you a postcard last summer. I hope you have received it. Yes, thank you very much for that. No question for the moment. Thank you for all of the time you've invested. That's how I would say that. So you are very, very welcome. Thank you so much for watching. I'm just noticing on my screen, I'm kind of glowing a little bit. I don't know if I set the lights up different today. Let's see here. This is not... Okay, next one is from Saeed, and then we'll go back to the lesson. Saeed says, which one is better to use? He's struggling with a disease or he struggles with a disease. So here's where we have those two phrases. Usually you suffer from a disease. Although that's not 100% true. You could say he's struggling with cancer or he's suffering from cancer. Maybe you could use both in that situation, but both of your sentences are technically correct. He's struggling with a disease or he struggles with a disease. You can use both, those would work. Some people struggle with overeating. This is a very North American problem. In North America, people tend to eat too much. And it's kind of a funny thing to struggle with, but I have an understanding of this. I try really hard to eat healthy, but sometimes I overeat. I don't overeat to the point where I'm getting to be a very large man. I'm a fairly normal size person, mostly because I exercise. And what's interesting about this is we have people in the world who struggle with overeating, but we also have people in the world who don't have enough food. So it's very unfair. This is something I think that bothers me about North America, the fact that we have a lot of people who overeat, but then we have people in the world, other parts of the world, that don't have enough food. So some people struggle with overeating. I was just going to say, there was a question that went by. Oh, Jason J in the chat said, what is the temperature in Canada? I think it's -1 this morning, Celsius. So again, hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to the 437 people watching. We are just getting started on an English lesson about the struggles of life. We've looked at a few so far, and I will happily admit whichever struggles I suffer from. Or things that I struggle with. But welcome. Hello, Sean from Free99 has just jumped in the chat. And let's keep going here. By the way, do you like my fancy mug this morning? I thought this was a nice mug. It has a bird on the one side. I'm just going to clear my throat for a sec. I'm sorry for the noise. There we go. Hey, some people struggle with social media, and in particular, they struggle with maybe a little bit of an addiction to social media. So we have things like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and Snapchat and TikTok. There are all kinds of different social media apps or social media platforms. And some people struggle with putting it down. So they have their phone and they're always looking at their phone. So in the world, we have people who struggle with I think I could call it a social media addiction. So they struggle with social media. We also have, I'm not sure if your culture drinks alcohol or not, but we have people who suffer from or struggle with, so they suffer from alcoholism, but they struggle with alcohol. So alcoholism is when you can't control how much alcohol you drink. So we have people in the world who struggle with alcohol, and then notice the difference in phrasing. They suffer from alcoholism. So this is a pretty straightforward one to explain. We have things like beer and wine and liquor. These are alcoholic beverages. They are either brewed or distilled And there are people in the world who struggle with the amount of alcohol that they consume. I know that there are a lot of other things in the world as well that can cause addictions, but one of the things that people struggle with is alcohol. So you can see how we're kind of, excuse me, bridging the gap here. One thing people struggle with is sleeping in. That's a pretty light, kind of a funny one, right? You kind of laugh at someone who sleeps in. But when someone suffers from alcoholism, when someone struggles with alcohol, it can be a difficult situation, especially if it is a family member. It's hard to know how to help them. So people struggle with alcohol. That's not a very nice sound, is it? So sorry, I'm coughing away on camera here. I really have no choice. I suffer from a bit of a sore throat. Do you see how I use the English phrase there? Some people suffer from drug use. They suffer from, they struggle with controlling an addiction to drugs. And so you will have people that possibly that you know who maybe they work all day and they use a lot of their money to buy illegal drugs. In English, we say people do drugs. So when we're referring to bad drugs, we would say that people, do drugs. Like, oh, did you hear about cousin Joey? He's into drugs, or he's doing drugs. This is a tough one too, because it is an addiction. And I think you are familiar with the word addiction. When you're addicted to something, you yourself have trouble controlling how much you use that item or that substance. So drugs are another thing that people sometimes struggle with. This is, I think, a societal problem. That means that all of society has to do something to help regulate or control or help people who struggle with drugs.